What's up, everyone? Kevin Carrillo here, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast. My guest today is Sarah Yetman, CEO and founder of SoverignPort and SoverignX. Sarah Yetman, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking.
Yeah.
It's been pretty hot, I will admit, here in Texas. We're right at the peak of summer, but we're getting through it, you know?
Yeah, it's not that bad. I'm only a couple hours north of you right now, and it's not terrible here.
Yeah, you're in Arkansas, right?
Yes.
What do you
Queen, Arkansas.
guys? What do you there?
Well, I just took over a building here, and so we're making it a distribution point for SoverignPort for everything CBD. And also the next harvest coming up, we'll store a lot of stuff, CBD biomass. We're getting rooms set up for that now. And then we have industrial hemp coming in. It should start being installed in January. So I'm really excited.
Wow. How long can you store biomass?
Usually in a climate controlled facility, usually a couple years is fine before it starts degrading pretty badly. So it's, as long as it's cool and secure and there's not moisture, it's not a hard feat.
Is it different when you're trying to store, say, distillate or isolate compared to biomass, or is it all pretty much the same?
Well, distillate and isolate will be in a sealed container, so it's a lot easier to keep all the elements out. Most of the CBD, the reason the room is so important is because they're in super sacks. So you have agriculture, out in the elements. So you just have to make sure the elements are really clean and there's not too much humidity and it's cool and all that fun stuff.
Nice. Awesome. Well, yeah. I know that SoverignPort is really expanding, and y'all are doing some great things when it comes to the international brokering and supply chain space. And I'm really excited to talk to you more about that. But first, let's let the audience get to know you a bit better. So I've done some initial research, and it's clear that you're a lifelong entrepreneur, which
yes.
I love, because I like to think of myself as a serial entrepreneur myself. So why don't you talk a little bit about like your entrepreneurship background and how you got started?
Wow. Well, I think my first company I started at 17 and was Thai distribution. Don't even ask how I got into it. It was crazy. And I started selling all those Thai kiosks in every single mall within 300 miles of me, and sold that company to a gentleman who owned a Sharper Image. He bought him because he could get actually Disney ties a lot cheaper, and he just picked up all of the business I had. And then when I was 20, I started a home shopping network and expanded into 4 states. I sold it late 20s by the time I sold that, and then started an airbrush tanning business so I could support the Houston business channel. I realized I was in my mid-20s and I had 0 people who would give me a recommendation other than myself, which is silly. So it doesn't matter if you've had 200 employees at once. If you get one person to say that you've shown up for work every day, it doesn't count. So I started the Houston business channel and interviewed thousands of CEOs and politicians, and it just opened a lot of doors. I had the connections. So a senior VP pulled me on as their, or a public utility pulled me on as their senior VP, and I started just selling products for that, their fiber and all of the other stuff that goes with it. So did that for a while, was recruited to help a credit card company, a MasterCard logo, prepaid employment card. And we sold them for $24 million inside of 11 months, and became oil and gas consultant. I knew everybody in Houston, so it was easy when the oil boom happened to say, hey, I know the VP of Halliburton. Let's get your stuff taken care of in North Dakota. So did that for a while, got into alternative energy funding. My daughter was going to school in France, and her best friend's parents were best friends with Shane Hemingway, Grace Kelly's godson, and they have an alternative energy fund in Monaco. Met with him, we put it together, started doing funding in the U.S., got into humanitarian funding, went to Peru, Bolivia, took a couple years off, and I got into industrial hemp, saw a need, and now we're trying to fulfill it.
Wow. So your brain is just wired that way, right? It's really where you kind of see an opportunity or you see a gap in a particular industry, and do you just immediately gravitate toward finding a solution for that, or?
Yeah, when you see an issue, and I think I'm more that way now, and it's because of some killer mentors I've had in my life. But if you see that there's an issue, there's always a solution, regardless of what the issue is. It could be the most horrific thing, and there's a solution. So if you just keep your mind on the solution and being solutions oriented, sometimes it takes a couple of days, but you can figure it out. And if you can create a business around it, you make money. So it all works.
Mm-hmm. Well, being an entrepreneur, I know that I've had others on the podcast where say they've been in the financial reporting space, and it's been within different industries, but then once with the Farm Bill being passed in 2018 and industrial hemp being more legitimized, they've pivoted to cover that topic. And some of them at first said that because of the stigma due to the term marijuana and the Schedule 1 listing of THC. They got a little pushback and some flack from some of their industry peers, right? They were saying this could be detrimental to your career. You shouldn't be doing that. It's illegal. Did you feel any of that when you pivoted into the industrial hemp industry?
Well, getting to the CBD, it's a challenge, especially if you're going to be in charge of shipping it. And I'm glad I had a good team. I've got a U.S. Customs agent who will not let anything illegal or off or in the gray area happen. My attorney, who was my co-host on Tuesdays at Houston Business Channel, worked for the Pentagon at the time, and now he has his own law firm. And I just have some really great industry leaders who have protected me while I've gone after this. Because really, if you're growing CBD, on one side and cannabis on the other, even a farmer who's grown it for 80 years can't tell the difference between the two buds. They can't. It has to be tested. So when I'm shipping CBD biomass, it looks just like, or CBD smokable bud, it looks just like I'm shipping marijuana. And there are a lot of issues in there. And I saw where I could meet a need. But I mean, what I'm telling farmers now, though, is industrial hemp is so much different than a seed. And I'm doing 3 classifications. You've got, cannabis, you've got CBD, and then you have industrial hemp, which is just the bast fiber. You grow the stalks to make textiles or, cloth and paper and plastics and whatever. So I'm really pushing towards the industrial hemp side because you don't have to worry about the legislation. There's 0 THC. You're growing it. You're not even growing it for the oils. You're growing it primarily just for the stalks. And that's why I'm here in Arkansas. We're putting in an industrial hemp plant. And so once that starts becoming installed, we've got to do roof work right now and building work. But once the industrial hemp plant is installed, we can invite farmers in, show them the difference, give them the seeds, and start planting here right away.
Right. And that's, I recently had Alyssa Nolan on, who's the executive director of the Texas Hemp Coalition. And we talked the potential for the industrial hemp market, and states like Texas are just in prime position. We've got land, we've got a lot of farmers who have experience, right? And it's a lot easier, correct me if I'm wrong, to grow hemp as opposed to growing hemp for extraction purposes like CBD and whatnot, just because you put it in the ground, you make sure that it grows high enough, and then you take it out, right? Because it's really
right.
grown for fiber and those material goods like you mentioned.
Right. You don't have to baby it. And really, when farmers are growing CBD, all of their money is in how much they have to make sure this bud on top of this huge plant is not going to get hot. And it's hard to control that unless you honestly know what you're doing. Not going to get hot. It's going to have the most CBD percentages in it, because if it comes out at 6%, which is normal, you're not going to get any money for it. So you're not going to get the returns you need. Whereas industrial hemp, it's just the stalk. You grow it like you grow corn. There are 0 issues. You don't have deer trying to eat it. It's just, It's so much easier. And I think everyone really sees the advantages of industrial hemp, because literally we could supply all paper without cutting down trees. We could supply all plastics, they're biodegradable. We could bring jobs and manufacturing back to small towns while supporting our farmers. And we don't need money to do that. Like, all of this is self-sustainable, not to mention that hemp cleans the air, the ground. There's CO2 credits for it. It'll clean water supplies. We could plant this directly on top of where oil fields had, the water coming out, the fracking water, and you can heal those farmlands. And so there's a million things you could do with it. It's just putting in the infrastructure. It's like redoing the steel manufacturing. The infrastructure has to be there. If you can't process the industrial hemp, there's no reason to grow it. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. I'm putting every dime I get from anywhere into industrial hemp. We're putting in the manufacturing here, and then I'm going to North Dakota to work with a few communities up there to duplicate what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's almost like a no-brainer, right? And before, I guess, the 1930s, hemp was just used in all aspects of life. I mean, when I was reading this book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, I mean, the hemp seed was primarily fed to not only domestic birds, but wild birds, right? Families had hemp stalks in the back of their houses where, they had 12 to 15 plants so that they could make the ropes and the twine and the material goods like we talked about.
Absolutely.
Now, like you said, it's that infrastructure needs to be in place. And that's really what has been the challenge for most farmers, especially when the Farm Bill was passed in 2014 and there were pilot programs throughout the country. A lot of these farmers, and even after 2018, a lot of these farmers, they could easily grow it, but then they're sitting on tons of flower because there's not enough processing plants or extraction labs in place. So,
right. And then farmers were, and they were sold. And I don't feel like it's a hurdle because people are smart and they understand the differences between the two products, but they were sold pricing before anyone was. So before the Farm Bill, of course, CBD flower was expensive because we can't grow it here. Of course, it was astronomical. But as soon as we started growing it, farmers were being sold seeds for $2.50 a seed. Stupid, just to grow a plant. And then they thought they were going to make 100,000 an acre, and everyone grew. So we're still sitting on about 50% of the supply of the biomass from last year, and another harvest is about to happen. So I think a lot of people, just they feel like they were thrown out, like industrial hemp isn't the way. But they were sold on oil, on CBD oil, and it takes a lot to manufacture that. And there's a long supply chain to get it there. And you're not the person. Yes, it'll end up selling for the 100,000 an acre, but you're not the one doing it. It's going to be the label who, paid 80,000 the acre by the time it's all processed to get over to them. So there's a lot of steps in there. But industrial hemp's completely different. We can do this. You can bale it up. I can keep it in my warehouse for years. We can do this just like they're doing corn, just like they're doing soybeans, and guarantee payment at the end, and help with crop insurance. So there's a lot of things we can do to help the farmers with industrial hemp now, which is really, CBD is not going to save small town America. Industrial hemp will. Industrial hemp can bring manufacturing every 100 miles. We could have a new manufacturing facility. Once this place is open in DeQueen, anyone who wants to come look at it and duplicate it and put one next door, I don't care. I welcome it. I think the more processing plants we have, the better. It's going to help our communities. It's going to help put people to work, and it's going to support farmers. You can't do better than that.
And is that where you think a lot of the investment in this industry should be, since it's such at the ground floor, is the infrastructure and making sure that those processing plants are readily available for processing? Or like where should we start first?
I know, I see the I'm stuttering. I'm so excited. I work with people all over Europe, Africa, South America. I work with internationally every day. And this is definitely the future. This is the only sustainable future. there are too many companies that got in with $100 million into CBD, and they will be the giants of that industry. And because we're talking pharma and we're talking, so many things that can be done with it, that will be taken over. This is not a small time thing. If you're a small processor, sell it. Figure out how to get out. That's not your future. It's going to be taken over. You're never going to be able to compete. I promise you the future of it is going to be grown in Colombia, where you can process some of the best CBD and plants for pennies of what we can do it here. That's where the industry is headed. And I'll keep shipping it for them. But as far as America is concerned, if you're going to put your money into anything, and I'm talking from San Francisco to, I'm talking whatever you're going to invest in, stop and invest in industrial hemp. This is the next boom. And I'm not just saying that because I'm trying to get people to put money in my company, because I'm not offering that. I'm saying that because that's where I'm putting my money. I see the future of this, and we could literally have 5,000 of these processing plants and you would still not be in competition with anyone. It's a fail-safe. You can have your own communities. You can do right by the people, and it's sustainable. These jobs that are created will last 100 years.
Yeah. And you know what? It's almost like when you put it that way, due to the COVID pandemic and everything that's going on, I've seen some posts on social media quite frequently of people just kind of say like, let's put our money together and let's find a commune out in, wherever, Utah, or let's just go somewhere with a lot of land. But it makes a lot of sense with what you're saying, because there's so many job opportunities, and the whole industry as a whole could just help everyone, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Only from what we're making in terms of goods or even medicinal products, but like you said, the CO2 emissions, the amount of CO2 emissions that the plant takes in, the fact that it's good for livestock, to feed. There's just so many uses for it.
Right. And I worked with North Dakota. I didn't work with them. I went and talked to them. So North Dakota State University has been doing this ag for a while, and they've been working with a gentleman out of Carrington who grew hemp oil. And they were taking, when he processed his hemp stalks, just the sludge at the bottom, because he didn't have anything to do with it, he was piling it up and taking it to North Dakota State University. They were putting it on livestock feed, the cow's feed. They'd just sprinkle on it just to see, and they were taking, blood work, seeing what would happen. Their fertility rates went up, and the cows got to the point where they refused to eat unless this was on there. They would turn their nose up to it at lunchtime or dinner time, and wouldn't eat until the next day if it was missing it. So there are so many different uses we can utilize industrial hemp for, and we could go green, and it's all the same product. So I'm passionate about this. I know it's the future of our country. We just need to get more people involved. And I'm in a town right now of 6,000 people. They need jobs here. They have farmers here. It's a small community. People are now worried with COVID about getting out of cities and being in a smaller atmosphere. This place is so safe and clean and wonderful, and the people are amazing. There's not a rental car here. So the gentleman who owns the hotel I'm staying at gave me a truck to use while I'm here. So, you have the most amazing people. I'm using someone's truck, and it's all cool, I guess. So shout out to Robert, go to the golf club, stay at his hotel. So, but it's an incredible, if people are really wanting to pull together money and have their own community, go find small town USA and go put your investment there. You can believe in the people, they're hardworking people, and they're ready for industry. Now is the time to do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And shout out to Robert. Yes, that was very nice of you to let Sarah use your truck. So, let's talk about your company, right? You're the CEO and founder of SoverignPort and SoverignX. It's an company supporting brokering, supply chain, and global transport logistics of CBD and industrial hemp. Let's talk about that. How many countries are you working with? You're global? You're all over?
Yeah. So when we get a new country, everything changes. I used to stay on top of all the countries all the time and figure out what new laws are coming in. But unless people are actively shipping there, I've kind of put a halt on it. It's changing daily. The laws internationally are changing daily, depending on what region you're in. So, we've shipped into Africa, out of Africa, out of South America, out of Europe, all over Europe. What I'm seeing right now is I was supposed to be in Asia in March, in April, in May. Japan, South Korea, China. Of course, that didn't happen. But Europe right now is needing lots of biomass. Asia is going to need a lot of isolate and distillates. They're going to start moving. That's going to be the headquarters of the cosmetic industry. That's where it's going to be made. And they're going to need, because they're major companies, L'Oreal, Maybelline, that's who's buying the end product. They're going to need EU GMP certified. They're going to need to know that this is pure, 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 and there's not anyone who's going to sue them down the line. So that's where I see a lot of the money going and what people should set up to do. But we can ship in, if it's legal, we can ship in and out of anywhere. And if it's not legal, I don't know why anybody would try to send it there anyway. So it's fine.
Right. And are you seeing, so like you mentioned, Asia's going to be investing big on the beauty products, right? And cosmetics. And then you mentioned Colombia is great for growing the biomass, the flower, right? Because just of their climate.
Right.
And then you said the EU. What are they focused on, distillate and isolate? Or, I mean,
well, the EU is about 8 to 10 years ahead of us. So they have the EU GMP, all their SOPs in place. They have standardized testing, which we don't have. I mean, our testing's all over the charts. So they have the infrastructure set up to where when you pull it out of, one of these major conglomerates, if you buy from Still Canna, you're going to get the best isolate you can possibly get, bar none. And then you sell that that's the market Asia would want to buy it from. They're probably not going to buy it from the US. They just probably won't. Our standard, I take that back. Some of the smaller companies, because our isolate's so cheap, some of the smaller, Korean cosmetic companies that aren't as branded might buy from the US. But if you're really wanting the larger companies to do business with you, they're going to buy it out of the EU.
Just because they've had so much time, you said, right? They're 8 to 10 years ahead of us. So, and so when did that start then? Like, so they were basically, like, would you say that the EU was like the founders of CBD?
They started experimenting with CBD and hemp long before we did. We had, and you read The Emperor Wears No Clothes. We just had mass legislation on it because you can't get, Dow wanted to, they wanted the petroleum plastics. And so we had to just outlaw anything that had to do with hemp in the United States. And it's crazy what we did. We let lies and I'm not against capitalism, but we let lies and ridiculous forms of capitalism destroy our economy and our planet. And we can rectify that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Europe understands, the necessity of having the hemp plants, and they've been working on it. Romania, I know a farmer in Romania, and this sounds absurd, it's not out there. He's farming 500,000 acres of hemp. 500,000 acres. He's been doing this for 20 years. So most of the rope, all the rope we're using on Navy ships are coming out of the Philippines. Usually it was from Manila, and it's all hemp rope. So it's something we use all the time as a nation, but we're just now allowed to start growing it. In some states, Texas is one of the last ones. Some states they have issues even with 0 THC growing industrial hemp. South Dakota's having a few issues. And I know we're going to work through all those with education, but we're still a little behind.
Right. Well, and I may butcher this, but I'm surprised when you say, well, not surprised about the EU being a leader because they've had so much time to research and learn about the different cannabinoids, specifically CBD. But I have had guests on where they've talked about the EU's Novelty Foods Act. And I don't know I don't know if I understand it correctly, but basically my understanding of that is it's more stringent regulations around anything that's consumable that we would eat with cannabinoids in them, like say CBD, and they're trying to make that more regulated and more stringent. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think, and I don't know. I haven't been in the meetings with the EU, so I can only speculate. But there have been so many issues with just U.S. companies not doing the right thing. I mean, you saw the whole vape debacle, and I mean, there's been issues with, accountabilities and standards, and so, someone brought up in the meeting, anything that's a new food that we haven't tested before needs to have the novelty food, so we can prove that it's a marketable product. It's a product that the public can use. Whoever brought that up probably wasn't wrong, but they don't realize this has been a food for a million years. This isn't a novelty. This is something, if we need to regulate, like the FDA, if we need to regulate how we're doing the food, yes, we should. Do we need to regulate how the vapes are made? Do we need to have standardized testing? Yes, 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 of course. But EU putting in novelty food, I don't think it's going to fly. It doesn't even make sense. It's bizarre. They've been selling hemp hearts in the EU for 80 years. It's not a new food. So, well, we'll see. We're still 6 months out from whether or not they're going to pull that one off.
And I'm curious as to why now? Why now? Tighten the reins.
I think a lot of it has to do with imports. I mean, EU was fine. EU was supplying EU, and now the US has gotten so cheap. We're sending stuff over, and the EU is like, wait a second, this is new. So I think a lot of it has to do with the international market. I think if we hadn't opened up, they would not have made that decision. And it's only hurting their own country. I mean, if I were them, and not that, I mean, that would hurt me, but if I were them, I'd put heavier restrictions on the importation and lighter restrictions on the EU, because they already have to hit these standards. They already have to hit, the no imperfections, EU GMP certified labs. They already have to hit all of these overwhelming. I mean, especially in Germany, they've got these crazy regulations to make sure it's the best of the best. So if I were in the EU pack, I'd put more regulations on the US, on Africa, on South America, and have us prove we're allowed to be in their area, instead of have their own businesses have to jump a hurdle.
Well, and outside of the EU, what countries would you say are the most challenging when it comes to importing and exporting laws?
Definitely Africa. As far as legalization, Australia is very difficult. You still have to be a pharmaceutical license to have. You have to prescribe it. So just having it is an issue. So I try not to deal with Australia very often unless an actual pharmacy calls me, which they don't. They've already contracted for Colombia. Like it is what it is. But Africa's definitely a challenge, and it's not just the legislation. They have a lot of good intent. There's a lot of great people over there. It's just with between 20 and some places 80% unemployment. There's so many payoffs and people who need to eat, so they put their hands in the pot, that it's amazing that stuff even gets in and out. So I'm looking forward to Africa growing. I think the best thing for Africa to do is not have us import, but to show them how to grow it there. And that way they don't feel like another country or, the white US is taking advantage of them and no one's getting paid except for the US and that one guy who owns all the Walgreens. So, I think the best thing to do is to go over there and teach them how to farm and how to interact and create a business structure internally instead of import export.
Yeah, I like that idea, to empower them, right?
Absolutely. And they've got the land and they have the people and they have the farmers. And these people have heart. Let the money stay there. Keep the money there. Let it stay there. There's no reason for us to go in and try to make money out of it. I think what's fair is fair. There's so much money to be made right here in the US. while we're creating jobs, while we're becoming a manufacturing company again. Why are we worried about how we can make money off of them when we can make money right in our backyard while we're supporting each other? I mean, it's crazy, the possibility, the potential.
Is this the most exciting industry that you've worked in all of your experience being a
Bar none, bar none. And it's funny, every company I've been in, I've always thought, what's the exit strategy? My exit strategy in this is death. Like, I'm doing this when I'm 80, I'm going to be trying to talk to R&D about what the new product is, so we can make sure all of our industrial hemp plants are making the appropriate things, and we're looking towards the future. Like, this is life. I am so passionate about this.
That's a perfect way to put it. This is life, because it's not just an industry where you're profiting and making a product that people like to enjoy or whatever. It's really something that is life changing, both, you know, from a sustainability standpoint and a betterment of your life standpoint, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, absolutely. And we don't have to, and I'm shooting SoverignPort in the foot. We don't have to transport this. Every country can do this and heal their own economy on their own. Oh, that's crazy. But we can, you know, it's amazing. We can make anything, you know, my cell phone cover, my book, like anything. I can make anything out of hemp. And we could literally have 10,000 different manufacturing companies, and we're still not making everything we would consume anyway.
right.
So, I mean, it's unlimited, the possibilities here.
And not to mention, like you said that example of your book, but like we wouldn't have to wait hundreds of years to grow trees, to cut them down, right?
No.
You know,
And I'm in Weyerhaeuser land, and that's what they do. And God bless them. It's been a great industry for a lot of years because we didn't know the other alternatives. But we can grow as much hemp, and I'm going to get my numbers wrong, but it's really this crazy. We can grow as much hemp in, let's say, 5 acres or 10 acres as we could with, you know, 2,000 acres of trees, but it comes back every year. You don't have to plant it and wait 20 years and then chop down a whole forest, which has an ecosystem. You can easily do this in a field and keep it going and keep the trees. It's more sustainable. And the crazy thing is, I don't know if I've mentioned this, it cleans the grounds and the air and in the water. Like, you really can't get any better. You can turn all the land organic. I tell people, if you want to plant organic, plant industrial hemp. Plant industrial hemp first. It sucks all the toxins out of the ground. It cleans your soil. If you have soil issues, plant industrial hemp. It can't hurt. I mean, right now, not wholesale, you can get an acre. You can get, if you just spread it, you spread 35,000 seeds an acre. Just, you know, being a careless farmer, if that's what you were doing. And a pound is 35,000 seeds, and it's about $35 a pound retail. $35 a pound, you can plant your whole acre. It's going to grow. You chop it down, your stuff's clean, and I'll buy your product. I'm right off the rail. We're on the border of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. We're right here on the corner. We're just a couple miles outside of Texarkana. So if you want to plant industrial hemp, we'll help with the seeds. We'll buy your product. I want to get more people participating in this.
well, and that's what I really admire about what you're doing, is that you see the potential, and like we just talked about, from all aspects of life and how it's beneficial, right? The pros definitely outweigh the cons, and you're just all about building people up and helping them, right? Arming them with the tools and the education, the resources to do it themselves. Like that example with Africa is so beautiful. It's like, we don't need to be profiting off of every country. The whole world can benefit from this one plant. I mean, hemp, I think it's been said that hemp is like the buffalo of plants. It's amazing.
Right. No, it's incredible. It's incredible. And something so inexpensive can do so many things and bring our economy back. So, and I knew there's so many people preaching this. There's a lot of people who are just hemp, you know, evangelists, and they can get out there and talk it. But I knew we had to show it. We have to show how this works. And the way we're setting up our company is we're putting up a co-op that will interact with the other co-ops in the city. I don't want to put anyone out of business, and we'll do alternate year, you know, with certain farmers. But this co-op gets 20% of the profits of the manufacturing company and the processing facility. And then we've got 20% going back to our employees. So every year when we have our profits in there, we're like, well, how do we do better by them? How do we give them more benefits? How do we put together a pension? How do we, and we try to make it better every year, and they can vote on that. They've got a board seat. My employees will have a board seat. Then you've got 20% to R&D, and you've got 20% in a fund so you can grow. And you can, there might be a farmer down the street that realizes how to more economically harvest land. Well, then this money is to invest in him so we can help the whole community. And then we've got 20% ownership, which is me right now. So we've got it set up to where it's a community project, and all we're doing is putting money back in the community so it can be sustainable. And I know I can preach that all day long, but until I prove it, just talk. So that's what we're doing in DQueen now. And it's so exciting. It's ridiculously exciting to be a part of it.
That's so amazing. With the Schedule 1 listing, right, and the government really dragging their feet on removing that Schedule 1, do you foresee the states and like the projects you're talking about, the community projects, do you think it's going to be on the states to really overturn the federal government's viewpoints on marijuana as they deem it?
I think in the next 2 to 10 years, it'll be off Schedule 1. But it's going to be like CBD. You're going to have Marlboro making cannabis. It's not going to be a small man's game. They will corner that market. And here's the other thing, is it's all going to have to be done indoors, because industrial hemp will happen, and industrial hemp will cross-pollinate with anything else that's out there and will completely destroy the crop. So all of CBD, all of marijuana, for lack of a better term, all has to be done indoors. That's where they're going to grow it. And they're going to get, better results, and they're going to turn around faster. But it's $100 million, $500 million game, where industrial hemp, we can do this locally. And there's zero THC. So even the most conservative cities can feel comfortable knowing they're not growing anything that a 3-year-old's going out and chewing on, whatever the case may be. And they can also know, if grown in their community, it will cross-pollinate. If there are any illegal grows going on, it's going to mess them up. So it's their way to protect their community, take care of their farmers, have a new co-op, have a new manufacturing. Really, industrial hemp is not going to be a big man's game. It's not going to be a Monsanto game. It's going to be a community awareness game, and bringing things back home. And that's where there's so many people here are like, oh, I'm from in DeQueen, Arkansas. I kid you not. Someone goes, oh, I'm from LA. And another person told me they're from Scottsdale. And I'm like, well, why DeQueen? Why in the world DeQueen? And they said, oh, family's here, and everything got shut down and we couldn't afford to be there. And, we haven't seen this side of our family for 30 years, but it was the only safe place to go, and it was affordable. People are going back home. Wherever your roots are, they're going back home. And we can make sure those homes have jobs, fun jobs, amazing jobs. And, you have more community here.
It's almost like, there was a time during the pandemic, especially when we were really shut down, where I was just posting things on social media that was with the hashtag pandemic pros, right? So focusing on the good that's come out of this, not the bad that we're hearing every day. And
right.
It's so encouraging, and it makes me so happy to think that, industrial hemp could be somewhat of a savior when it comes to the economy, the community, jobs. Just everything under the spectrum, because like you said, it can be localized, right? And I totally agree with you that there's not going to be one big player, because there's too many applications for hemp, right?
So many. I ordered the equipment, and just ordering the equipment, I've had 3 phone calls. Sarah, what are you doing with your herd? Sarah, before you make the cardboard, because we're going to make this into a cardboard manufacturing, before you make the cardboard, when you do the rolls of paper, can we have the paper? We're out of paper and can't get it from anywhere. So it's amazing the phone calls you get, and of course all these people get what they want. I'm all about, if you're an industrial hemp, I'm about community. I'll give you my herd for cost. Let's ship it over, so I'm excited about the players. I know we can do this as a community. The communities can come together and do this. North Dakota, the state, called me and said, oh, we've got a fund. October 1st, we're going to name you as helping us with it. And Jan 1st, we want to go full force, which is why I'm trying to get everything done here by January. So there are communities wanting to do it. They just need direction. There's not enough information online. People don't know where to go. They don't know how to do the end product. I do. There's also a dozen other consultants who I know, who I trust, who do as well. Call us. We want this to happen. I don't need a piece of anything. I just want to show people how to get it going. We can literally do this in every small town in America.
Yeah. And as we're on the topic of communities, I read through your bio and I know that you're a member of the Choctaw Nation. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I've always been curious about, like, because I know that most tribal nations or all tribal nations have their own governing bodies, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what is the industrial hemp market or industry looking like within those tribal nations? Have they been ahead of the game? Are they following suit of the US now that it's legal in 2018, or what are you seeing there?
Well, that's a tricky, a lot of nations are different. There's some nations who have really embraced it, but they embraced the CBD part because they saw the money. And it's a commodity. It's going to go down. Bigger players are going to get in. There's some markets in CBD I could see that if the tribal nations, if they came together, could totally kill. And I'd love to be a part of it. And I've pitched it a million times. But there hasn't been an overwhelming support for it. And a lot of it has to do with treaties from the 1800s. They're afraid that they're going to get a lot of government funding cut or won't be approved for grants if they get into industrial hemp, even though it's federally legal. Like in Oklahoma, for instance, it is now legal for medicinal marijuana, but the Native American communities cannot participate, even though it was just all their land was awarded back to them. They can't participate because of a treaty they had signed. And so because of how they've been trained and treated and brought up, it's really hard for reservations to go out on their own without thinking grants in the back of their head, to where I've never had a grant in my life. I'm just like full force, let's just go. So it's hard to bring my mindset into a tribal community and be like, screw big government, we got this, we can kill it, we can lead the way. And they go, whoa, so back up, lady. So, how much Choctaw are you, you liar? So, and I was part of a tribal magazine. They just did a whole story on let's do industrial hemp, but there's still a lot of blowback. I was really excited about this town, DeQueen. It's where my brother was born. We grew up in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, which is 20 miles away from here. My dad was the pastor. This was the closest hospital. My mother had my brother here. And so I have come back home, and Choctaw Indian Nation is about 12 miles away from me. Actual Choctaw Indian Nation. So one of my big, it wasn't as convenient to be in DeQueen, but the opportunity was so great. And I know that once I start building this, I can bring in my tribe and show them off their land without their money, and show them what we're doing to help the community and see if they want to do it as well. And just be a leader. You have to be an example. You have to be an example first. And then everyone will get excited and say, oh, I've been there since the beginning. And that's fine. Everyone can say that, but you have to be an example. And that's why I'm here.
Right. Wow. That's so amazing that you're going back to your roots like that. And I have been to Broken Bow and stayed in a cabin out there, and it is so beautiful out there.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I mean, before Broken Bow was Broken Bow, I was running around there with like no shoes on.
Yeah, that would be a great place to grow up. I grew up in a small town just south of Albuquerque in New Mexico. So
it's beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm very familiar with activities outdoors and fishing and all that kind of stuff. But being in Dallas, I'm in a concrete jungle now, so it's been an adjustment. But there's good to that as well. There's positives.
Yeah. Well, before I got into industrial hemp, I was just always in a dress and heels. My hair was done, everything's done, and I tell my kids, they're now in their 20s. I tell them, when I was little, they taught me how to frog gig by 8 years old. And, I knew to look for water moccasins before we jumped in the creek. And and I was telling them all this stuff and they just side eye me and be like, there's no way Jimmy Choo mom is like frog gigging and Broken Bow. They never believed me. But now that I'm back down here and I'm jean jacketing it and flip flopping it, I feel like I'm at home. I'm so excited to be back. And I just want this for everyone. You just feel more free when you can go back home. You have real solutions. A lot of people equate their small town being brought up as being, a lot of people are just impoverished. There's not like a lot of things you can do. There are not a lot of options. And so you leave. And if we can bring those options back home and you can feel this free because you know you're home, it's an amazing feeling to have. I know opportunities coming in. I don't look at these small towns anymore like it's a dead end road. I mean, it's the beginning of America, having manufacturing again. It's the beginning of just freedom for our communities. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a little bit excited.
Are you ready to jump out of your seat?
I am. Every time I start talking about it, I get goosebumps and I go like crazy excited and do a little happy dance when I'm off the podcast.
Well, I never thought of it that way. And it's such a good way to look at it because it's not like hemp. When you gave the example of small towns and most people leave because there isn't job opportunities that's specific to what they're wanting to do, right? In my case, I'm a digital marketing professional. I have my own social media marketing agency, and I've thought and flirted with the idea of moving back to New Mexico, but the clientele just isn't really there yet. You know what I mean? In terms of opportunities. But when you think about hemp, industrial hemp, it's not market specific. It's every community in every aspect, not even in this country, but the world can benefit from that,
Oh yeah. For sure.
I never thought of it that way. It's like, and what you're doing in terms of, the education within these local communities is just the fire starter. I think once that gets going and catches fire, it's just gonna boom and emerge throughout the entire country.
Right. And it's exciting. And I've had people tell me, just keep your mouth shut. What happens if someone comes in with $1 billion and does this everywhere and you don't get to form your empire? Thank God. Thank God they do. I am happy that they do. Do they need help? I'll help them. This is going to transfer to so many people's lives and their children and their children's children. This is legacy building. And I'm just, I had the people in the EU say, oh, Sarah's starting industrial hemp all over the world. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm starting it in the US. I know what the US is capable of. I'm going to start industrial hemp plants all over the US, and we're bringing manufacturing back home. When my grandfather retired, he's 94. He still gets a pension from Dow. He was part of the greatest generation. And he fought in World War II and he came back, and his wife was a stay-at-home mom. He had 8 kids. They went to private schools. And he was a blue collar worker, and they afforded a house, and they could afford their cars, and he paid cash for everything. We can go back to that. Our greed needs to subside. We need to figure out how to make it. You can have ethical capitalism. You can have conscious capitalism. You can let a person have a wonderful family and paid time off, and they will work their heart off for you and for the community. And it's kind of showing it. And once we show it and it happens, I hope that my grandchildren's generation is just so much better because of what we started today. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
It's going to really drive home that humanizing us again. I think, when you talked about the Great War and that time when the country came together, right, for manufacturing, and the industrial boom happened during the war, right? That's what they call it, the Great War. We've never been so divided as a country right now, right? So
it's true.
I could totally see that industry, industrial hemp, bringing everyone together just because of the value add that it brings to everyone's lives.
Yeah. And honestly, regardless of where you go in the world, regardless if someone's trying to shake me down for money or steal or whatever they're doing, everyone in the whole world, I would say 99% of the whole world, all they want is security, to know that their family's okay, safety. That's all they want. And however they go about getting that, some's ethical, some is unethical. You just have to look at people and realize that's their end game. If that's the end game, how can I be a participant in this? Let's start small. Let's start in the communities. And if the 40, 50 jobs I'm bringing here, which aren't a lot, if the 40 or 50 jobs in the small plant, and they'll grow, that I'm bringing here, can also support another 150 in the field for farmers and the drivers going back and forth and the rail loaders and whomever, I've done my job in DeQueen, Arkansas, and we'll go to the next town and do it again. You know, we'll just keep multiplying it until people get the point. You can do this. You can, if I'm driving a new car, all my employees should be able to drive a new car. It's just, that's the way it is. And I think that once we get back to that, and people's life is precious and their time is precious, and then being able to enjoy their life should be the most important thing to us as a civilization. I think once we start valuing people, and I can show that you can actually make a ton of money doing it, I think we'll get more people in the game.
What's the next town after DeQueen, Arkansas? Do you have anything in mind, or any?
Definitely. I'm going to be in North Dakota. North Dakota, I spent 4 or 5 years there. My son was in the North Dakota National Guard. I love North Dakota and their people. They went through an oil boom, and a lot of the farmlands were destroyed. They've got the farmers, they have the integrity, they've got the people, and they have the room. And so I'm going to get DeQueen set up, start North Dakota, and then I'm sure phone calls will come in for the next place.
Maybe New Mexico?
Yay, let's do New Mexico.
I have some contacts out there that I'd love to get you in touch with. Manny Fresh was on, and he's a hemp consultant, and the guy just knows how to grow flower. I mean, shout out to Manny.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Hey, it's hard to grow flower. When you get someone who knows how to grow it, man, you keep their number.
Absolutely. Yes. And I've called him several times as I've talked to farmers and whatnot, you know, looking for advice. And I'm like, I'm not the guy to talk to. You got to talk to Manny. So.
Yeah, I love it. Man, when you find those people, it's special because it's few and far between.
Absolutely. So, Sarah, what else do you want to talk about? What else excites you in this industry, or what should we be looking forward to maybe in the coming years in terms of trends? What are you seeing?
I would love to see more companies who are on the R&D side. I think there's going to be a tremendous need for whether we cultivate seeds better, so I can grow primarily for paper or plastic. You know, I'd like to see seed cultivation. I'd like to see more money going into, you know, the R&D to find different kinds of plastics, to where one could break down in 2 weeks and one does break down in 10 years. You know, I think there's a million things we haven't even thought of yet. And so just if there are so many great R&D groups right now that are, sounds like I'm doing R&B groups, but they're great R&D organizations that I would love to team up with, that I would put money into, just to see how we can expand the uses of industrial hemp. There are major manufacturers, even Lego said they want to go 100% biodegradable plastics. Hemp is an amazing opportunity, and they want to do this by 2023 or 2024. We could do it, but we have to figure out the exact, there's a lot of science behind that. This is not an easy overnight thing. So that's what I want to put the industrial hemp plants in so we can use it as a viable solution. But a lot of this money needs to go into research and development to find better uses for hemp so we can get more industries on board. As soon as I get 2 or 3 industries to sign up based on what we're doing, the rest, everything else is going to fall in place. Of course, economic development teams are going to want to be involved. Of course, large corporations are going to, of course, John Deere is going to build equipment. You know, of course it'll happen. We just have to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Start with first that research and development. Like you said, learn about different ways to cultivate the plant for the different applications that it can be used. And then once that's in place, the big players will come in, right? And
easy. I could see Coca-Cola bottling, all their bottles be made out of hemp. And how cool is that? I got a cannabis cup, you know, I mean, how cool is that? And then, that sell by date is when the plastic's disintegrating, you know, drink it or throw it out because it's going to leak on you.
Right. And we won't be seeing all that trash in the ocean anymore, right? I mean,
Exactly. Exactly. And so, I mean, there's so many things we could do to make our whole life better. So I'm like, it's one plant. It's one plant.
Do you think you'll ever live in a hempcrete house?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a company, those are the ones who wanted the pulp. There's a company, I'd give them a shout out, but they have no idea I'm doing this, in California, and they're one license away from being approved to start doing hempcrete houses, and that's who's going to get my herd.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. So absolutely, I'd live in a hempcrete house, more so than I'd live anywhere else. Absolutely, I want a hemp car. Anytime I can support the industry, I'll do it. You know, if I can buy whatever it is hemp, I will do it. There's a new bag called Knot, K-N-O-T, and it's, you know, K in parentheses N-O-T, and it's a plastics bag company. I want to say they're out of Alaska, and it's all hemp bag. And you better believe as soon as I start the store over here, all of our bags are going to be from them. You have to support the industry. It's going to cost a little bit more now, but the fact that it can change, we can change our entire legacy. We can change everything about America in one generation if everybody saw the possibilities to this. These towns don't need me. They don't need PepsiCo. They don't need anybody. They can literally put these industrial hemp plants in themselves. I mean, I'll help them, but people can come together and do this. It's very easy.
It may not be too late to run as an independent this year.
Oh, I'm running for office in 5 years. I've already decided.
Awesome.
Yeah. So this is going to be the base. We're going to prove we can do conscious capitalism. We're going to prove it. We're going to put people to work. And then I will run for office because I want to start changing legislation. I want to start making it possible for everyone to succeed. It's an easy thing to do. No one has to control the world. You can actually make your decisions in your hometown, and everybody can do better for it.
See, now I'm about to jump out of my seat because you saying that gets me excited. There's not many, especially when you look into the political landscape, these career politicians, they don't really have that mindset. And it's so refreshing to hear somebody, you know, take that viewpoint, you know, and remove the greed, you know, and the oversaturation of markets that is happening, you know, on a daily.
Right.
So, hey, you have my vote in 2024.
Tell me where you're living. I'll move there, and that's where I'll run.
Well, I'm in Dallas, Texas. So
awesome. You're like 3.5 hours away. It's not bad.
Yeah. So maybe I can go check out your storage facility.
Come up anytime. 165,000 square feet on 12.5 acres.
Wow. That's amazing. Last thing I saw, I was looking at your Twitter and I noticed that you recently met Willie Nelson. What was that like?
Oh, I met him a few years back, but he's amazing. He is so amazing. I mean, he came in and out of the offices a few times while I was in Houston, but I accidentally sat on an airplane with him from Maui to Colorado, and it was the best accident in the whole world, and just incredible guy. I mean, everything you've ever imagined about Willie Nelson, it's twice as good. So he's an incredible man. Man, he's a national treasure.
Yeah, he seems like a really interesting and really laid back, cool human being, you know.
I'm hoping once we get this up and I can I'd like to prove it first. I don't want to make people just take my word on it. Like, let's prove conceptually that this can happen. But so 2021 we'll process, sell it, show everybody how it works. I'd love to be a part of Farm Aid. I'd love to go down there, show the farmers, be part of that whole thing. So we've got a lot of big plans, and hopefully I can ring up Willie Nelson's team sometime soon. Be like, hey, let's go on the other side of cannabis and make some money.
And I'm sure he would be totally open to that because he's educated in the space. He knows the potential, you know.
Yeah, we can make your rolls out of hemp.
Well, Sarah, you are a true inspiration, and this has been so enlightening and just fun. I've really, really enjoyed having you on, and just hearing your viewpoints on the potential and how this could bring everyone together and boost the economy. And I couldn't agree more, you know. So is there anything that you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Just if you're interested at all in doing industrial hemp in your community, feel free to reach out to SoverignPort, Sarah at SoverignPort.com. Talk to your economic development teams about it. This is really, I will give you the blueprints. You don't even need to hire me. Just, I'll tell you how to do it. Just let's all get involved in this. This is really how we can turn around our future, and it's easy to do.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, Sarah, thank you so much again for your time. I really
Thank you.
Yes, and I want to thank the audience for listening, and we will be back again with episode 30.
Thanks, Kevin.
Bye.